Well, hello and good morning, everyone. I hope you are ready. This is Jeremiah. We are going to have a pretty cool webinar today. We've got a lot of neat paving and concrete techniques that we'll go over. And April Fool, that's not actually what the webinar is. Okay, I'm sorry. Planting part 2. How about that, huh? It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you did see the part 1. But also if you didn't, you're still going to be okay. But this is intended to be, just kind of picking up where the first one kind of left off, and Amanda's going to talk more about that. I'm here to tell you a real quick couple housekeeping items. Mainly that this is, of course, being recorded, gonna live on the website right next to part 1. And also there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It stands for questions and answers. And if you click it right now, you'll see that you get a little dialog box thingy, and you get that situated, and it'll be a little quicker for you to type a question, but note that you're going to be able to see the answers that we type to other people's questions. So it makes a really great companion. You're here with us live as we talk about not concrete, but plants. And Amanda is going to take us away.
Thanks, and hello everybody. This is Amanda Marin, and I am excited to take you through even more planting basics for our Planting FX tools. It's actually so good to see you guys. I see a bunch of people here who attended part 1 already, and some of you even emailed in saying how excited you were for part 2. So thank you. I gotta say, it's so good hearing your feedback, and Jer and I actually discussed and used it to help fine-tune today's topics. So last time in part 1, this should be familiar. We went through a lot on just how to get started and some early tools so you can use Planting FX right away without much effort, showing how quick it can be to start your first project with land effects. But once you've started, that's of course not the end. The more you learn, the better and faster your landscape design workflow can be, and the easier it becomes to communicate more complicated landscape plans. So let's look at the skills that we are going to be covering today. We're working our way across the rest of the Planting FX ribbon to learn some essentials of these tools in the Planting FX ribbon. Then after this webinar, you're on to some intermediate skills, which are basically our power tips. I showed you how to find those power tips for planting tools in the last webinar. And so you can just jump off on your own and explore the spot that interests you the most after this. You basically take a bunch of these beginner skills, put them all together, and accomplish a trickier task, which is, again, those power tips. That's what I try and do in those. So for questions, feel free to ask any level of question you have about planting design tools at the end of this presentation. Maybe questions like, how do I accomplish this kind of plan are great for me to highlight these beginner tools in different combinations. Now that we're going to kind of complete the full gamut of the beginner tools today. So this is probably a breath of fresh air. This is my last slide. Let's jump into CAD and go straight over here. No slides. We're going to get right into it. So to prepare for today, you'll notice this is the same plan. I did change the scale a little bit from last webinar so I could show more of this on an example sheet. I still have my old example sheet as well with the smaller scale for kind of a blow up example on how we can start showing our planting design across 2 different sheets like this. So I have set the scale to 1 to 200 for metric, and that is, hey, just so that you guys know, I put this together, but just so you know where 1 to 100 is on the imperial side, it's pretty close to 1 inch equals 8 feet. But obviously for standard purposes, probably closer to 1 inch equals 10 feet, whereas my 200 scale over here is going to be closer to 1 inch equals 15 feet in kind of that imperial scale. You can see my equivalents over here for what we're doing today. So the very first thing, usually the first question that comes up whenever I do a training is, okay, we left off at the end of last presentation with, okay, we placed some plants, we placed this little guy down here, this shrub area. We labeled some things. I'm going to do a bit more labeling, but I kind of removed them for today. And we placed a quick schedule. And usually after I place the first schedule, people are like, hey, I have multiple sheets like I have here. Can I separate out the schedules into 2 different schedules on 2 different sheets? How do I do that? And the answer for that is that you're going to want to look over here. So we're making our way across over here to the new work area tool. This guy is really, really powerful. And I'm going to show you a few ways that this becomes handy in your workflow. So simply right off the bat, I can go in and grab it. And it brings up this window right here. I can give this a work area title. So maybe I want to make just the schedule on this sheet over here of just the plants in this area right here that show up on that sheet. So I can do that. Maybe I'll call this the small space plaza area. And I can do things like add a layer suffix. I'll show you what happens when I do that. So maybe small plaza as a suffix. And I am going to, my plot scale for my world now is 1 to 200, but I want this area to still be 1 to 100 to match this scale over here. So I'm going to click here and I'm just going to change the scale in this plot scale dialog box through the work area tool. And I'm going to say okay, and that changes it just for this work area, and I'm going to say okay. And now it's asking me down here to select the first point or to select a polyline. I don't have any polylines drawn yet, so I am going to just click to start defining around this area very easily. And I'm just going to grab all the stuff in this area for this schedule and right click to end. And we've got ourselves a work area. Now, this color, these are randomized, and this might be a little bit light for our presentation, but that's okay. I'm just going to grab these, and I am going to drop this down and change that to another random color that is slightly more legible there in this presentation. So you can see that over here. I'm going to really quickly use a quick, there we go, like that, so you can read it a little bit better. But now that is a M leader, multi-leader pointing to a polyline around here. And these 2 items now have a lot of smart information on them that identify them to land effects as a work area. I'm going to do a slightly advanced process because what you'll see is if I run a schedule in here, let's open up my planting from my last webinar. I also went through here and added a lot more species. So I developed out my palette. But in here for my schedule tool, if I just run in this model space, a quick schedule and say, okay, it now allows me to select a work area. I have an option for all work areas and entire drawing. So if I were to right click, it would default to entire drawing and ignore any work areas in my drawing. If I select a work area, it will create a schedule for the work area, and this all work areas option, we can show it at the end if you want, but just I'm going to describe what it says, what it does. I type A, and if I had more than 1 work area in here, it would create a schedule that had a total quantity column and then multiple work area quantity columns. So it's great for a cover sheet schedule. In this case, I can just click this work area, and I'm just going to pop this over to the side. Oh, that's way off to the side. Let's move it over. So there's my schedule for just my small plaza. I have 3 of these cherries over here, and I have just those few shrubs and that shrub area that I placed in there. And that's it. That's all that's in there. So we can quickly create a schedule like that. But we're following some best practices. And so we actually want that schedule over here in that sheet. I can, if I'm in here, and let's say I save this, right? And then go into here and it will update. Let's see. Planting drawing, reload. There we go. And I run my schedule in here and I include XREFs and say, okay, it's just going to go straight to placing and not ask me about the work area because it can't read that work area as it is through this XREF in my model space. So this has been XREF'd into here just to the planting plan, and it's on a ZXREF layer. That doesn't totally work. That doesn't work for recognizing work areas. So let's fix that so that we can place this schedule on that sheet through the XREF. So what I want to do is move this work area off into an XREF. So I'm going to grab both of these, and if you have more work areas, just grab them all at once. And I'm going to type W block. And I've already selected, so I have my selection, and I'm actually going to delete them from the drawing. And then I'm going to get it to save that block. You can put it into a folder structure if you want. I am just going to put it into just this regular area, and I'm going to call it a work area.dwg. That's the DWG block that I'm going to create. I'm going to save that and say, okay. Yes, I'm going to replace my existing one that I created there, and it's gone. Now what I want to do is in this drawing with my plants, I'm still in the one where I can select all my plants. I'm going to go back up to work areas, new work area, and I'm going to click this XREF button at the bottom. I'm going to browse to that work areas that I just created and open that, and that's going to place it right back in here perfectly. But now it's an external reference and it's on the L work area layer, and Land Effects can read this. So even in this drawing, if I wanted to run a schedule, I can still select this work area, and it works even if there's multiple work areas in that XREF. It will pick out the right work area, so that still works. But now if I go over to, I'm going to save this. I'm going to go over to my LPO1 into my model space. I'm going to reload that saved version. The work area is gone. I'm going to use that same process in this drawing. New work area, browse to the exact same file, open, and there it is. And now I can go over here to my sheet. I can run a schedule. I can say, okay, and it's now going to ask me for a work area because now I have an XREF on the L work areas layer ready to select. Place that down, and I have a nice schedule in this sheet that I can keep regenerating for changes that happen into this XREF. So that is one aspect of the work areas. While I was doing this, I also, if I kind of move this, I will have to go into that XREF to kind of affect that. While I'm going into that XREF, I'm just going to grab all of this. I'm going to copy with a base point. And the reason is because in that XREF, I don't have, actually, I'm just going to do a little bit of things. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to open. I had a plan before, but I realized I have a better plan that I just thought of. I am going to instead X reference in my planting drawing into here. That's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to attach a drawing. And I'm going to go over to my webinar drawing. There it is, my planting drawing. And I'm going to XRef that into here. And this is a cross reference. So I want to definitely make sure this is an overlay reference. And yep, relative path. Because otherwise, if I did attachment, it would be a circular reference and cause all sorts of problems. But we're going to do overlay so that we can have the work area drawing X reference the planting drawing, and the planting drawing X reference the work area drawing. I'm going to say okay. We are just going to 0, 0. Oh, that should have done it by default. There we go. And I'm just going to leave it like that. I don't really need to see the base, but you can also X reference in the base here, just so that you can see stuff while working on your work areas separate drawing. So I can move this around it just into a bit more of a legible space. But you can see on this M leader that the label in here says that it's 1 to 100, while the rest of this drawing is going to be this 1 to 200. So if I were to, you can edit this if you want to by going into edit plant or even edit plant and editing this work area. You can go in here and click this plot scale and change that on this work area if you want. But what I can now do is in my regular drawing, I can label things for different scales. So I'm going to just save this really quick and go back to my planting drawing. There we go. It's moved over. And I am going to label a few things. So let's go back to our labels and go to single label. If I label this plant right here, this label is nice and tiny, but this plant over here is just outside this work area. If I were to label it, the label is much bigger, twice the size, and that's being controlled by the scale on this work area. The idea here is that the text in both of these labels will be the correct size, the correct text point size in the final layout space. So if I save this and we hop over to my layout space just to check and reload that to see that label, you can see over here, this label is actually quite legible at this 24 by 36 sheet of paper size. If I compare it to the text in that plant schedule, you can see it's very legible. And this is controlled through my general preferences. Okay, and if I go over to this drawing over here, where I have it set up for 1 to 200, and I'm just going to reload this drawing, you can see now that this is also equally legible. And if I were to run some text in here, it would be the same size, basically. So that's how the land effects scale is really being controlled and how you have a little bit more power over this with work areas. So you can have multiple work areas all in the same drawing, all with different scales connected to different viewports. So kind of continuing from that, another way that you can, another tool that you can integrate into a work area, but is also very powerful on its own, is this new UCS tool. So very frequently you will find that you might not want to have this drawing be all kind of tilted like this. If I kind of show you with my X hair angle tool, you know, a little bit tilted, right? I want this to be nice and straight like this. I can do that with UCS. What you don't want to do is grab everything and use the rotate tool and rotate your actual drawing, because what happens then is this base plan you've likely gotten from a consultant, an engineer, an architect, something like that, where you are then going to eventually give your planting plan back to them. Well, you want that process to be as seamless as possible. So if you've gotten the plan from them, you want to keep their drawing, their base plan, exactly the same rotation as what they gave it to you, because that's what they're expecting. What you can do is use up here in FX Planting, new UCS, in order to just rotate how you're looking at the plan. It doesn't actually rotate the plan in model space. It just rotates how model space looks at that plan. Kind of like tilting your head rather than actually moving the plan in a rotation. So how we use that, we can use it a few ways. We can go new UCS, and we can just create a UCS in here. The first thing it's going to ask is to specify a new origin point. This is great because it also helps fix some little CAD bugs of when the origin is way too far away. It's also great for if you want to coordinate with a 3D program like SketchUp. All of those programs, SketchUp, Rhino, even Revit, will work much better when the origin point is close to your actual design. So I like to snap it to something concrete that's actually going to be there, like maybe the corner of a building. So I'll do an F2, or sorry, F3 to turn on my snaps, and then I'm just going to snap to this endpoint. Now it's saying specify an x-axis direction. So I want to click on a line that is going to be horizontal in my final view. So I'm going to choose this side of the building. And now I've got this line and it's asking me which way is up. So I'm going to go up. And now it's asking me finally select a work area. Well, I don't want to pick this one right now because it's in an XREF. I'll show you inside the XREF later. But I'm just going to right click to say none. And I want to give this a name, and I'm just going to call this building for right now. And so what that does is it just rotated everything and zoomed extents. So if I zoom in here now, you can see this is nice and perfectly lined up. It's very square, but I can easily go back to the world scale by restore UCS. Click on world and say okay. And that again zooms extents, but now I'm back to my 0, point being off in space in this case, right? So let me show you that again, but let me this time assign it to the work area. And I think this time I am going to XREF in my, my base file. So I'm going to go over to work areas. I'm going to reload this. Great. And I am going to XREF in my base file. XREF, I'm going to use FXREF because I realized on this installation, my FXREF isn't linked yet and I like it better. You can see the difference. So I'm going to go over up to my base file, base metric, there it is. Great. Yep. Overlay, much better. Relative. There we go. Click that button so that next time I click this button, it does this like I expect it to. And I'm going to say, okay, there we go. Now I see everything. Okay, let's do this again. So I'm going to do a new UCS. And this time I'm going to do a UCS specific for this small plaza. So maybe it is linked to this little corner right here on this plaza. And I'm going to line it up with this plaza. So we're going to say this one, and I'm going to say this way is up. And now I'm actually going to select an XREF or a work area, select. And now see the big difference you might not have realized, but remember last time what happened, it zoomed extents And before it zoomed extents, it asked us for a name for this UCS. This time it didn't ask us for a name. It set it to small plaza already automatically. And it didn't zoom extents for the whole drawing. It zoomed extents for the work area. This is super powerful, especially if you have a lot of work areas winding across a very windy road and you want a lot of different UCSs for each and every viewport. Here's what we can do now. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go over here to my planting drawing. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go over here to this sheet. And this time I'm going to reload all the modified XREFs. And I'm going to unlock this. Oh, it's already unlocked, this display. But I am going to double click in here and I'm going to restore a UCS, but I'm going to restore it while inside a viewport. Restore UCS. There's my work area small plaza UCS. It pulled it from that XREF already. So I'm going to say okay to that one. And if I were to go through and actually select the work area, it would zoom extents. But in this case, I can just zoom back in. I can grab my scale. I can, okay, great, 1 to 100 for this drawing. Say okay, set the active viewport, yes. Line it all back up again and lock this down because it's ready to go. That's how fast it is. You use these tools to quickly set up your UCS, quickly set up all your scales, and then you can start using restore UCS and scale to quickly set up any viewports that you need as you go along. So you can bing, bang, boom, knock off all of your different sheets across a large drawing if you need to. So that's a lot of what you can do with work areas and UCSs. By the way, just in case it wasn't clear, UCS stands for User Coordinate System. Let's move on though. Okay, back to some of these planting focus tools. This was kind of more of a sheet setup tool for your planting plans. Let's go back to these planting focus tools. And I'm going to show you a few more tools, especially here in the drafting section. So very quickly first, we kind of left off last time in our last webinar, placing this shrub area. And I'm going to show you a few more tools that you can use placing shrub areas and ground covers. So first, I've kind of placed a few in here, but I have a few more areas that need to be filled in. Let's fill those in. Some of them are a bit more complex than others. The first thing I want to show is our ability to exclude shrubs. So I have a few shrubs placed in the middle of this area, and they are evergreen. So really, we don't want to put a ground cover directly underneath them. They're not going to grow like that. I would like to exclude this area from this ground cover area. So what I can do, ground covers have this specific ability to exclude shrubs. Shrub areas do not. So if you want to exclude shrubs, you have to do it with ground covers. So I'm going to grab this carpet bugle, very lovely purple, and I am going to go ahead and place. Place is what I want to do. And while I'm placing this ground cover, I get all of these options down here. So I can tap E to exclude shrubs. Let's do that. E, select the outer boundary and click. And you can see it actually drew polylines around the size of these symbols and cut them out of the hatch. So we're ready to go. When I run a schedule, when I pull up a label, that quantity is going to reflect those cutouts as opposed to the whole area of this whole polyline. Well, how about this area? We have this happening again. So I'm going to place a little bit more. I'm going to exclude shrubs and click down here. and it excluded it from all of them except these guys right here. For these, it won't exclude shrubs that land outside of the boundary, even just a little bit, even just a little teeny edge of it squeaks over the corner, it won't exclude them. They have to be completely enclosed inside your outer boundary. So what I can do here, though, I'm not at a loss. I don't have to do something super manual. I have another tool I can use. I'm going to go over here to FX Admin. I'm going to go down to General Tools, and I'm going to go to phatch. I can also use phatch as a shortcut command while placing the plant. Let's go to phatch. I can select the hatch and I start to get some brushes. So I have some keyboard commands. If I tap K, I can see what they are. So W and S for a smaller and bigger brush side, wider, smaller. This little squiggle, I always forget the name of that character. That one is for add and subtract, and then I can rotate the brush with A and D and tap B to choose a brush size, brush shape. So I'm going to say OK, and if I tap B for brush, I see all the different shapes that we have available by default. So like I can grab this crazy brush down here. I can say, okay, you can kind of see the shape going on in there. So I can hit A to rotate that shape around. I can tap S to make it a little bit smaller, and I can make a crazy wiggle pattern at the bottom of this hatch if I want to. So like A, and keep going, right? That's not totally what I want to do. This is a lot better for like a detail, like something like that. Or if you want it to look a little bit crazier with a solid hatch, maybe like a color render situation. But in this case, I just want to stamp this out. So I'm going to go back to B and grab that circle and say, okay. And there's the size of it right now. So I want to hit D. No, sorry, W, my bad, W for wider. There we go, right there. And I'm gonna hit the squiggle key to get this dash line. And if you don't see the dash line, that's to do with your LT scale in the drawing, but I'm just gonna hit that and that cut it out. So you have the ability to add an outline to a hatch or subtract a tilde, right? I'm pronouncing that right? Okay, thank you to the chat. Thank you, Jeff, for it. I appreciate that for that live help in my webinar. Let's go on. So that is that brush tool, but we have some other placing tools available to us. So over here, I have this area, but I also have a hole in here, and I want to place this very quickly. Quick tip, you need to place this, it's best to do this on a polyline, and if you want a nice circle polyline, another user in a recent ticket just alerted me to the donut tool, which I had never actually used before and thought it was a 3D tool, but you can go donut. And as long as you make sure the inside diameter of the donut and the outside diameter of the donut are exactly the same, so say 5 and 5, it will actually create a perfect circle with just a regular polyline as the edges. That I love this because it's actually going to help a lot with a lot of tools that have problems with circle objects. Just in CAD in general, I don't know why it treats circles as different, but it does. But here, I've made this. I can go, let's put some more of, actually I'm going to put some candy tuft around this beautiful fountain. This is from our default block library. If you want to take a look at it, it is under here, under blocks, under plan graphics, under fountains. And the cool thing about these blocks that we've created is if you go over here, quick tip, site color, turn that on, it actually turns on the color for these default blocks that we have. Like, look how beautiful that is, how that's going to render. Anyways, I'm going to turn off color render. That was a little sidebar. But I can go and grab that masterpiece candy tuft, and I'm going to place it. And this time I'm going to click multiple. And you could do this multiple with shrub areas as well. But I am going to tap M for multiple. It's going to ask me to select the outer boundary and then the inner boundary, and then right click. I don't think it grabbed that outer boundary, but I'll right click and I'll see if it got it. Yeah, it got it. Never mind. I just couldn't see it. Perfect. Okay, so that placed those in there and excluded this area, and I can keep going and placing this around if I wanted to. But I'm good with that for now. That is all one hatch that I can then label, schedule. It's all accurate. Quick note, you can't do multiple and exclude shrubs at the same time. They have to be separate. So if you have if you need to exclude shrubs and you need to do multiple, I would suggest excluding shrubs and then just selecting the hatch and going through the select tool over here to add more boundaries manually afterwards. You can also, under FX planting, under the planting preferences up here, you can go in here and choose to always exclude shrubs from ground cover. So you don't have to always hit that E. However, again, this won't happen if you choose the multiple command. Let's keep going. Okay, more cool tools for placing ground covers. I'm going to go FX admin. I am going to go back to general tools, and I love PolyDivide. I love that we added this. Grab that. Can you believe there's no way to divide a closed polyline in native CAD into two separate closed polylines? Well, now you have a way. So it's saying select an object. I'm going to select this polyline. You have two options: divide into equal sections. Great, very applicable, especially for irrigation designs. Not totally as applicable to planting designs. I like for my planting designs to use this option: split exactly along a specified segment. But just know that this is possible if you need it. I'll say, okay, specify a crossing angle. So here I can either click a polyline or I can just click 2 points to define a polyline. So that's what I'm going to do. This is kind of my center point. Oh, it actually clicked that. Let's go back here. I need to split along, and when I click things, I need to click in blank spaces. So this is where actually drawing the polyline first can help save you time. I'm going to turn off my snaps so I don't accidentally snap to anything. We're going to right over here, and bam, 2 closed polylines. So I can keep going. Let's see there. Let's see there. Nope. Oh, I need to select the polyline first. Split along, and bam, and bam. Great. So now I have, and I'm going to get rid of a few duplicates that are happening in here. I have 3 different spaces that I can then start just, let's see, some jasmine. I'm going to place some in here, and I'm going to place some in here, and I'm going to go over here and do some more candy tuft over here. I mean, that's a big space for candy tuft, but you get the idea of how you can divide these up and start placing different hatches. You can start doing wild designs. Keeping in mind with PolyDivide, it is just a straight shot in terms of dividing up as an area. It just does it along a single vector. Cool, let's keep moving. Let's get through everything. We have, okay, we are going to do another item that people have asked. We're working on it, is to fill a polyline with shrubs or with actual symbols. We are working on that. In the meantime, I have a great tool for you. So let's say we have this wild polyline over here that I need to fill with shrubs. Maybe this shrub. What I can do, I'm going to go up to my FX planting, I'm going to go over here and drop this down and click clone plant. Now, quick note, we just renamed these to clone and mimic. I'm going to show you mimic. This used to be called match plant. We decided match plant was a little bit too close to way too many words that are used in CAD and land effects. So we changed this, renamed it to clone plant. This I'm using a new ribbon. It will be available by next week and you will have it. You'll be able to have it. Right now it's not available, so you won't see this. Right now you'll see match plant, and that's okay. It's the same tool. I'm going to hit clone plant. I'm going to grab this symbol and we're going to keep going. So in my keyboard commands, I have this button right here, T for paint mode. So I am going to pop this on and I'm going to tap T for paint mode. Look there, it's on. And now as I hover my mouse down, it just fills. I'm not clicking. I'm not clicking at all. And I'm just going to keep going like that and quickly fill. Another option, of course, you can use the triangular array. This one's a little better, especially maybe not so much for array, might be better for a bigger space like this, whereas this might be better for more of kind of like a narrower space, especially since while you're doing this, you can tap X, you can use more keyboard commands and tap X for X hair, change your X hair angle, and then change how it is snapping around to better fill this space. You can also, I'm going to right click and end and do X hair and right click to get it back to 90. You can also offset these in and use copy along a polyline over here to fill this in very quick. Lots of different options, but I really wanted to show off paint mode because I've used that quite a few times, especially for filling in big swaths in, say, a restoration planting plan, where it really helped to show the individual shrub symbols as opposed to what do you call it, hatches. And I like doing this and then using, what do you call it, plant outlines to kind of bubble them all out. So try some of those in your workflow. The next thing I wanted to show was what you can do with edit plant. So we kind of went through, we grabbed a plant, we clicked edit, we set all the parameters to it. What you can also do is you have edit plant up here, you can click it, you can look at what the plant is. But I mean, it's not just for looks here. It's not just a pretty face in this plant info. You can actually now start changing things, not just data, right? But actual symbols. So you can grab a totally different symbol, say, okay, you can make this a totally different size, say, okay. And that is going to change all of the placed symbols in this plan. So you can go wild. You don't have to worry about picking the perfect symbol right at the beginning. You can change it later. That also works for hatches as well. So definitely try that out with edit plant. So I showed you our clone match plant, which is basically you want to use that instead of copy, but it helps you just pick a plant from here instead of having to remember what it is over here and find it in the list. Save you a little bit of time. But we also have mimic plant, which used to be called match properties. Obviously, match properties or match plant properties, very, very confusing with the AutoCAD match properties, and they're very different. So we changed this to mimic plant. Now, all this does is you can grab a source plant. Let's go with this, right? And change a destination plant like that. And with this tool, once you change a single destination plant, you can then do a bounding box. So if I do this, click and bound across, it's not going to change all of these land effects plants. It's only going to change the first species I chose. Super powerful for changing a whole swath of plants in one area. I like using it for using match plant between a smart plant and dumb blocks that came in an old planting plan. Like as long as all the blocks are named the same with a unique block name here in properties, you can just run over a whole swath of a plan and convert them all to smart plants. Very powerful tool that way. It also, again, mimic plant works between hatches as well. So I can go mimic, and I can change this ground cover as my source, destination objects, this shrub area, click, and it's now changed into a ground cover with the ground cover polyline boundary. Moving along, we've got XCOPY and XCORO. So with XCOPY and XCORO, they are located here under the array tool. You want to use these instead of the AutoCAD copy command. XCORO has this great ability where you can actually copy the plant symbols and the labels, and XCOPY you can do the same thing, labels and symbols. Basically, these are glorified MoCoRo. If you've ever used the MoCoRo, which stands for Move, Copy, Rotate, it's an express tool in AutoCAD. We made it better, made it easier to use and faster to use, and separated it into two tools so it's easier to just quickly have rotating when you want it and have no rotating when you don't want it. So I can grab this, I can grab that, I can grab that, and I can right click, pick a base point, pick a new point, and rotate it like that. And then of course you'd have to change the rotation on the M leader to 0 to fix those up after you've rotated. This is great for repetitive designs around buildings where you want to repeat the same swath of plants and you only want to label it once, but you want them all to be properly labeled. So the difference between that and regular copy, so if I do copy, regular AutoCAD copy like that, is highlight. We also want to highlight the highlight tool today. So I'm going to click that. And if I were to highlight this copied version, it actually highlights this plant. That's the problem. If I highlight this XCORO version, it actually highlights the correct plant. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm clicking highlight on the label itself. Hey, so you can label a whole swath of things and use the highlight tool to check later what you had labeled. This is great to use in conjunction with verify labels to help fix things. You can also highlight, let's see, all of one species. So if I click on this one over here, right, it highlights all the species in the whole drawing that are exactly like this one over here. If I click on that same species, but within a work area, it only highlights that species inside that work area. So keep that in mind while you're using highlight and work areas together. I can also pick out highlight from my plant manager and click highlight. And that's going to highlight even hatches. It will highlight all of that species. With that, also with highlight, I have this ability, I'm going to highlight that again, to either highlight additional similar plants. So maybe you want to highlight all the ground covers, you can do that through there, or I can select the current set. So hit S and that selects all those hatches. I can move them to a new layer, all of that. Oh, by the way, speaking of layers, I forgot to mention the suffix part of this work area. That label that got placed, it got that suffix on here. So that's really powerful when especially working in viewports and XREFs to freeze or do stuff with this layer in particular. Let's keep going. Group label, really quick. I can use a group label to edit how an existing label behaves. So this one's just labeling one plant. I want it to label all of these. I can hit that label with group label and it automatically goes into edit mode. So first window or just reposition. So I can go here, here, and now that's picking up, if I can verify that with highlight, all 3 of those plants. Pretty cool. Moving along, photo label. So I can, even in a drawing like this one, through an X reference. Oh, let me planting drawing, save, sheet, reload. There's all my plants. I can do photo labels. So I'm going to go in through this viewport. I'm going to go label, go to photo call out, and I am going to look at this plant right here. And that's going to pull up the botanical name and common name and search through photos. We are improving this a lot in the coming month. So if you have any recommendations on what you would like to see photo call out do in the future, please let us know. The first major thing we're thinking of is making it into an M leader instead of just this leader. So I can go through and pick out a bunch of images to kind of create a cut sheet on exactly what this plan is going to look like. Beautiful. So I get the buy-in, I get the okay from my client as quickly as possible to move forward. We have a few more minutes. I'm going to talk about some layer controls. We're going to look at some questions. And then if we have time, we're going to move into concept plants and generic plants. We're going to try and keep it at an hour today. So one big thing with layer controls, I do want to note how land effects works. So these are blocks, right? We've seen these before. They are block references. If I right click these and I go to block editor and open that up, I can see what's inside the block. Now, some people have asked, why don't you put all your line work on layer 0? And that's because that's not really the best CAD practice, especially in this scenario where we actually want different line weights for each of these lines, right? We want it to have a great graphic quality as if it were drawn by pen, those different line weight markers and pens. So we have all of our lines on standard layers. They're named after the line weight that they're intended to be. You can control these different colors in preferences. We talked about that last time a little bit, but yeah, so this is on a 050 LK. LK means block, the K means block. That's on a 13, so that's thinner. That's on a 35, so that's medium, thin, medium, thick. So they are all properly named and they are all by layer. So they have a lot easier layer control in XREFs and in viewports. So if I close block layer, that's everything in land effects. Everything in land effects is this way, by layer. So if I go over here, I can go in and change the layers. And these are all controlled here through the layer property manager, right? So if I go into my main planting drawing where all of these are, I can change the layers through this layer properties manager, or I can just really quickly go to FX admin, layer tools, X layer, and grab that line. It will even find a line inside of a block and tell you what layer it's on. So now you can easily find it in the layer properties manager, but even just from here, I can go in here and totally change that color. Say okay, say okay. I can change the line type too if I was so inclined, but now you can see that instantly changed, and it actually changed in the layer properties manager. Under here, under my there it is, this one right here, it changed that. However, if I go over to, you'll notice, as you start getting used to X references, and I save that, and I go back over here and I reload that, this didn't change. Changing a layer in an XREF does not change the color if you've already XREF that into another drawing and the layer now exists in here. So if I go into my XREF layers and I go into my planting drawing and I find that LK layer, LK tree 050, it's still green. So I can change that color in here. I can also use X layer to change that layer over to what I want over here, and it changes in here as well. Now I have another layer of control where I can double click inside a viewport, and I can use that layer properties manager, and I can change this VP color layer. Let me pull that out a little bit. Bam, VP color. I can change that to yet a different color. Oh, red is very garish for webinars, so we're going to go with a beautiful pink. Magenta, deep magenta. There we go. So that's my deep magenta for inside my viewport. It's still dark green here in model space. That was a viewport only color. And it's still dark green over in my planting drawing. So that's how you can use our layer controls. You can start viewport freezing, right? I have, if you have never seen this, and I'm mentioning it because a lot of people haven't seen it, you can actually do a viewport freeze just for a single viewport for a layer, as opposed to a the main drawing freeze. So I can viewport freeze something. Oh, let me actually go into a viewport in order to viewport freeze that. There it is, viewport freeze that, and the trunks remain, but that particular layer is gone. So you have a lot of control with the land effects plants in terms of coordinating with other people and doing what you need to do. Let's see if there's any great questions that we should cover before we spend the last few minutes on concept plants and generic plants. Jared, was there anything that we should, maybe I forgot?
Oh,
So many
can't
questions.
think of anything. Yeah, I can't think of anything. We had some great questions. Just I think one that was interesting was, Jeff mentioned with that outline, just kind of wondering if that outline line can be customized. And of course, it's its own layer. So if you did want it to be a thinner or thicker or non-plot or whichever, you could. And that's actually, I think you even have a cool power tip of the neat things you can do with the plant outline feature.
I love plant outline. It's actually one you created based on me asking for it, I think, when I was a user.
You were one of the people. That's true.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun working with you on that. Yep, I love that one.
But yeah.
It comes in on its own layers again, so you can control it through layer controls as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I think we'll try to wrap up here.
Sure. Okay. Really quick. I wanted to show it off. I do have some great power tips on concept plants. I have concept plants in 3 minutes, and I have plant mixes. Those are the 2 power tips. That's your homework. Go find concept plant in 3 minutes and plant mix power tips. 2 different power tips. But in a nutshell, what you can do is grab a concept plant. You can say new, right? And you can say shade tree. So this is like before you start doing anything. You're just like, oh, okay, that's a shade tree. You haven't even chosen your species yet. You can still put down symbols and you can still start counting things. So I can go place, right? And I can go place, and I can even use my my shotgun tools, and place a whole bunch of them, right? And I can label them with my regular labels. It takes on a different concept plant label style, so it's a bit more conceptual, right, with the whole just naming the design groups. And I can run a concept schedule, so drawing, maybe some size, and you don't need size. It's super simple, right? There, it's a concept plant. I have 14 shade trees. Now, once I'm ready to make this into a design plan, I can open up my plant manager beside it. I can start adding plants to my plant manager. And I can go into trees and I can start drag dropping. Okay, so this is a shade tree. I'm going to click it and then drag it and put it in here. So I can do that one at a time, or I can click assign and bring in plants, all the plants from this one. So maybe that one. I'm hitting control to pick a bunch of them, sweet gun, yep, that one, and my oak and my zelkova. Those are all my shade trees. So now I have a palette. So if I update my concept schedule, yes. Now I can say, okay, these shade trees may be any of these types, right? I can start putting in percentages in here to start figuring out how many I should have of each one. And then when I'm ready to start converting them, I can go edit plant, click on that one, transform it, and it's going to ask me, okay, which one of this design group palette did you want to transform that one into? Okay, and then I'm going to say, I want to transform this one, this one, this one, and this one, this one, this one into zelkovas. Okay, and now they're real plants. And I can keep doing that, edit, transform on the rest of these until I have my shade, my species actually filled out. And now I'm moving on to design plant phase. However, you can also treat these, especially shrub areas, as design plants without ever transforming them. So shrub areas is where you would actually start filling in all sorts of different plants and creating mixes, which will always be a hatch, and you can kind of figure out how many plants are going to go into one certain area, and then your contractor will buy all those plants and you'll put them all in and kind of place them on field. So that's how you would do that. Highly recommend. Help, go into here, find our power tips and go through that one. And then if you really want to just get going and you just want to place symbols, hey, go try generic plants over here. And try out generic plants, and you can just place any of these symbols and they will just place without the data. I'm in an experimental ribbon. That's what just happened there. It will be fixed before you get it.
Yeah, we're gonna edit that out of the recording.
Okay. Well, I think that's everything that we wanted to cover in advanced stuff. I know it was a lot, but I really appreciate you all joining in, following along, and let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone so much. Exactly. You're always welcome to send us any questions, any ideas for future webinars, any aspects of this that maybe you'd like to see more deep dives into. You know, we need ideas for webinars because we always are basically just kind of guessing what people need. So the more we hear from you, the better. But I don't see any questions rolling in. So I think we're just going to wish everyone a super awesome, wonderful weekend. It's gorgeous weather. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you next time.